The stagecoach that rolled into Salida, Colorado on that blistering June morning in 1878 carried more than just mail and supplies. It carried a cargo of human misery that made even the hardened miners look away in shame. Russell Northwood stood outside the general store, his weathered hands gripping a list of supplies he needed for his ranch, when he first saw the women being unloaded like cattle. His jaw tightened at the sight, disgust rising in his throat at the spectacle. The broker, a greasy man named Simmons with tobacco-stained teeth, was calling out prices and pushing the women forward for inspection by the gathering crowd. Russell had heard about these operations, men who preyed on desperate women back east, promising them jobs or marriages out west, only to sell them off to the highest bidder once they arrived. Most of the townspeople walked past quickly, their faces showing various shades of embarrassment, anger, or indifference. Russell should have walked away too. He had his own troubles, a failing ranch that demanded every waking hour, loneliness that ate at him during the long winter nights, and a reputation in town as the hermit who preferred his horses to people. At 32 years old, he had resigned himself to a life alone after losing his family to cholera 5 years prior. But something made him stop. Something made him look closer at the line of women standing in the hot sun, their faces hollow with exhaustion and defeat. That was when he saw her. She stood at the end of the line, smaller than the others, her dress so worn it was barely holding together. Her auburn hair hung in tangled waves around a face that might have been pretty if it were not so gaunt and bruised, but it was her eyes that caught him. Where the other women looked down or stared blankly ahead, this one looked directly at the crowd with a mixture of fury and terror that struck something deep in Russell's chest. She could not have been more than 21 or 22, and every bone in her small frame was visible beneath the thin fabric of her dress. "This last one's a troublemaker," Simmons announced with a cruel laugh. "Tried to run twice already. Got some fight in her, but nothing a firm hand cannot fix. I will let her go cheap, seeing as she is more trouble than she is worth. $50 and she is yours." The crowd laughed, and Russell felt his hands curl into fists. The woman's face flushed red, but she kept her chin up, her green eyes blazing with defiance even as her entire body trembled. She was terrified, he realized, but she refused to break. Something about that combination of fear and courage made Russell's decision for him. "I will give you 60, he heard himself say, his voice cutting through the laughter. The crowd turned to stare at him in surprise. Russell never came to town unless he absolutely had to, and he certainly never participated in social events, let alone something like this. Simmons's eyes lit up with greed. "Well now, Mr. Northwood, did not expect to see you here. 60 it is then. She is all yours." Russell counted out the money from his worn wallet, watching it disappear into Simmons's dirty palm and hating every second of the transaction. This was wrong on every level, but he could not see another way to get her out of there. The woman stared at him as he approached, her body going rigid, preparing for whatever came next. "Can you walk?" Russell asked quietly, noting how she swayed slightly on her feet. Up close, she looked even worse. There were old bruises on her arms and neck, and her lips were cracked from dehydration. "I can walk," she said, her voice hoarse but surprisingly strong. "I can do whatever I need to do to survive." Russell nodded slowly. "My wagon is over there. I have some water and food. You look like you need both." Suspicion clouded her eyes. "Why did you buy me? What do you want?" It was a fair question, and Russell did not have a good answer. "Honestly, madam, I am not entirely sure, but I know I could not stand there and watch this continue. Come on, let's get you out of this sun." She followed him to the wagon, keeping a careful distance between them, her body language screaming that she was ready to bolt at any second. Russell pulled out his canteen and a cloth bag containing biscuits and dried meat. He handed them to her slowly, like he would approach a skittish horse. The woman grabbed the canteen and drank deeply, water spilling down her chin. She coughed, then drank more. Russell watched her devour the biscuits with an efficiency that spoke of long hunger, and he felt anger building in his chest again. How long had Simmons kept these women traveling without proper food or water? "What's your name?" Russell asked, leaning against the wagon and giving her space. "Katherine," she said between bites. "Katherine Garrett, Katie." "I am Russell Northwood. I have a ranch about 5 miles outside town. It is not much, just me and too many chores for one person to handle properly. I could use help if you are willing to work for your room and board." Katie stopped chewing and stared at him. "Just work." Russell met her eyes steadily. "Just work. I will not touch you. You have my word on that. I figure you have been through enough without me adding to it." "Your word," she repeated, her voice thick with skepticism. "How much is a man's word worth out here?" "I suppose that depends on the man," Russell said. "I cannot speak for anyone else, but my word is all I have left that is worth anything. My parents raised me better than to treat another human being like property." What Simmons was doing back there made me sick. Katie studied him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Russell let her look, understanding that she had every reason to be suspicious. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right, Mr. Northwood. I will work for you, but if you break your word, I will find a way to make you regret it. I may be small, but I am not helpless." Despite the grimness of the situation, Russell felt a flicker of respect. "I believe you, and please call me Russell. Mr. Northwood was my father." The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Katie sat as far from Russell as the wagon seat allowed, her body tense and alert. Russell did not try to make conversation, sensing that she needed time to process everything that had happened. Instead, he focused on driving, letting the familiar landscape calm his own churning thoughts. What had he just done? He had no business taking on another person when he could barely keep his own head above water. The ranch was struggling. His cattle were sick with some illness he could not identify, and he was barely scraping by as it was. But when he glanced over at Katie, seeing her exhausted face and the way she gripped the edge of the wagon seat with white-knuckled determination, he knew he could not have done anything differently. Some things were more important than practical concerns. The Northwood Ranch came into view as they crested a hill. It was not impressive by any standard, a small wooden house badly in need of repairs, a barn that was listing slightly to one side, and corrals that held perhaps 24 cattle where there should have been hundreds. Russell saw Katie taking it all in, and he wondered what she thought of her new home. "It is not much," he said, feeling the need to acknowledge the obvious. "But it is solid and safe. The roof does not leak much, and there is a good well for water." "It is better than the cage they kept us in for the last 3 weeks," Katie said flatly. "And it is better than whatever would have happened if someone else had bought me." Russell pulled the wagon up to the house and set the brake. "Let me show you inside. You can have the bedroom. I have been sleeping in the barn anyway. Easier when the cattle need tending at night." Katie climbed down from the wagon before Russell could offer to help, stumbling slightly as her feet hit the ground. She caught herself on the wheel, taking a deep breath. Russell pretended not to notice, grabbing his supplies from the back of the wagon. The inside of the house was sparse but clean. Russell kept things neat out of habit, though there was a layer of dust over everything that spoke of a man who spent more time working outside than living inside. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a fireplace taking up most of one wall. A small table and 2 chairs sat near the window. The single bedroom was off to the side, containing just a bed with a quilt his mother had made and a dresser with a cracked mirror. Katie stood in the middle of the main room, looking around with an expression Russell could not quite read. "You really live here alone?" "For the last 5 years, yes. My parents and younger sister died of cholera in 1873. It has been just me since then." "I am sorry," Katie said, and she sounded like she meant it. "That must have been hard." Russell shrugged, uncomfortable with sympathy. "We all have our burdens to bear. Let me get you some water for washing up. There is a tub in the bedroom you can use. I will heat water on the stove." "Take your time. We can figure out the rest later." He busied himself hauling water from the well and heating it over the fire, giving Katie privacy to explore her new surroundings. He could hear her moving around in the bedroom, the creak of the bed as she sat on it, the quiet sound that might have been crying but might have been something else. Russell focused on his task, trying not to think too hard about the fact that he now had another person depending on him. When the water was hot, he carried it to the bedroom and knocked on the door frame. "Water is ready." Katie opened the door, and Russell noticed she had taken off her shoes, revealing feet that were blistered and bleeding. He bit back a curse. "There is salve in the kitchen cabinet," he said gruffly. "For those feet. And I will see if I can find some of my mother's old clothes for you. Might be a bit big, but they will be cleaner than what you have got." "Thank you," Katie said quietly. "I did not expect kindness." Russell met her eyes. "Kindness should not be rare enough to be surprising, but I am sorry that it is." He left her to her bath and went to the barn, needing some space to think. His horse, a black gelding named Smoke, nickered at him from his stall. Russell stroked the animal's nose, finding comfort in the familiar routine. What was he going to do now? He had bought a woman's freedom on impulse, and now he had to figure out how to make this situation work. Katie clearly did not trust him, and he could not blame her. She had probably been betrayed by every person she had encountered in the last few months. The sun was setting by the time Russell made his way back to the house. He found Katie sitting at the table, wearing one of his mother's old dresses that hung loosely on her frame. Her hair was clean and braided, and some of the dirt was gone from her face. She looked younger now and even more fragile, though Russell suspected that was deceiving. "Feel better?" he asked. "Much, thank you." Katie paused. "I should tell you something. I am not some fragile flower who needs protecting. I know I look weak right now, but that is because I have not had a proper meal in weeks, and they beat me whenever I tried to escape. Before all this, I worked on my family's farm in Pennsylvania. I can handle livestock, I can shoot, and I can work as hard as any man. I will earn my keep here." Russell pulled out the other chair and sat down. "I do not doubt that, but right now you need to recover your strength. We can ease you into the work." Katie shook her head stubbornly. "No. I need to work. I need to feel useful. If I just sit around, I will go mad thinking about everything that happened. Please." There was a desperate edge to her voice that Russell recognized. He had felt the same way after his family died, that need to work himself into exhaustion so he did not have time to think or feel. "All right," he said. "Tomorrow you can help me with the cattle, but tonight you rest. Deal?" "Deal." Russell made a simple dinner of beans and salt pork, and they ate in comfortable silence. Katie was clearly exhausted, fighting to keep her eyes open. As soon as she finished eating, Russell insisted she go to bed. He cleaned up, then headed out to the barn with a blanket, planning to sleep in the hayloft as he had told her. Sleep did not come easily. Russell lay in the hay, staring up at the barn roof, and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Katie Garrett was a mystery, clearly educated from the way she spoke, but claiming farm experience. Strong-willed and defiant, but with an undercurrent of terror she could not quite hide. and Russell found himself drawn to her in a way that both intrigued and unsettled him. He had not felt anything but numb for so long that this sudden rush of protectiveness and curiosity was almost painful in its intensity. The next morning, Russell woke to find Katie already up and waiting by the barn door. The morning sun cast a golden glow over everything, promising another hot day. Katie had found work clothes somewhere, probably more of his mother's things, and had them rolled up to fit better. Her hair was tied back practically, and there was determination in the set of her jaw. "You are up early," Russell said, climbing down from the loft. "Farm habit. Sun rises, you work. That is how it was at home." "Tell me about home," Russell said as they walked toward the corrals. He was genuinely curious about how she had ended up in Simmons's clutches. Katie was quiet for a moment, her face clouding over. "My parents died last winter. Influenza took them within days of each other. I had a brother, older than me. He inherited the farm. His wife did not like having me around, said I was eating food that could go to their children. So they sent me to live with my mother's sister in Denver. Except there was no aunt. My brother had sold me to Simmons, pocketed the money, and told everyone I had gone to start a new life in Colorado. By the time I realized what had happened, it was too late. I tried to escape twice, but Simmons caught me both times." Russell felt cold fury wash over him. Her own brother had sold her. "I am sorry, Katie, that should never have happened to you." "No, it should not have. But it did, and now I have to figure out how to live with it." She looked at him directly. "I am telling you this because you have been kind to me, and you deserve to know who you are dealing with. I am angry, Russell. I am angry all the time. At my brother, at Simmons, at every man who looked at me like I was a piece of meat back in that town square. And I am terrified that anger is going to eat me alive if I do not find a way to channel it into something useful." Russell nodded slowly, understanding more than she probably realized. "Then let us channel it. These cattle need tending, and I have been doing a poor job of it on my own. Let us put that anger to work." They spent the morning checking the cattle, and Russell was surprised by Katie's knowledge. She handled the animals with confidence, examined them with a practiced eye, and did not flinch from the dirty work. When she noticed the sick cattle Russell had mentioned, she immediately identified symptoms he had missed. "This is blackleg," she said, pointing to the swelling on one cow's leg. "We had an outbreak on our farm 3 years ago, lost half the herd before we figured out how to treat it. You need to isolate these animals immediately or it will spread to all of them." Russell stared at her. "How do you treat it?" "Mostly you do not. It is usually fatal, but you can prevent it from spreading if you act fast. The sick ones need to be kept away from the others. And you need to burn the carcasses of any that die, not let them rot in the field. The disease lives in the soil." They worked together to separate the sick cattle, and Katie explained everything she remembered from dealing with the outbreak on her family's farm. Russell found himself grateful for her knowledge and impressed by her competence. This was not some sheltered city girl pretending to know about farm life. Katie knew what she was doing. As the day wore on, Russell also noticed something else. Despite her exhaustion and everything she had been through, Katie never complained and never slowed down. She worked with a fierce determination that bordered on reckless, pushing herself harder than Russell would have pushed anyone. When he finally called a break for lunch, Katie protested. "We still have work to do," she said, "and it will still be there after we eat. You are going to collapse if you keep this up, Katie." "I am fine. You are swaying on your feet. Come on back to the house. That is an order." Katie glared at him but complied, though Russell could tell she was not happy about it. Over a lunch of bread and cheese, he studied her more carefully. The dark circles under her eyes had not improved, and her hands shook slightly as she ate. She was running on pure willpower and very little else. "Tell me about your farm," Russell said, trying to get her to slow down and rest. "In Pennsylvania." Katie's face softened slightly. It was small, but it was beautiful. Rolling hills, a creek that ran through the back pasture. We had dairy cows mostly, and my mother kept chickens. I grew up milking cows before dawn and helping with the haying in summer. My father taught me to shoot when I was 12, said everyone on a farm needed to know how to protect themselves and the livestock from predators. Sounds like you had a good childhood. I did, until it all fell apart. Katie's expression hardened again. But I cannot think about that now. The past is gone. I have to focus on surviving the present. Russell wanted to say something comforting, but he knew empty platitudes would not help. Katie was not the kind of person who wanted sympathy. She wanted respect and a chance to prove herself. So instead, he said, "That information about the blackleg might have saved my herd. I cannot afford to lose many more cattle. Thank you." Katie looked surprised. "You are thanking me." "Why would I not? You have already earned your keep here, Katie." "You know things I do not. That is valuable." Something shifted in Katie's expression, a slight softening of the walls she had built around herself. "I am glad I could help. Your ranch, it is struggling, is it not?" Russell saw no point in lying. "Yes. Cattle prices dropped last year and I lost several head to that illness. I have been trying to rebuild, but it is slow going. Honestly, I am not sure how much longer I can hold on." "Then we will figure it out together," Katie said with surprising firmness. "You helped me when you did not have to. The least I can do is help you save this ranch." Over the following weeks, a routine developed. Russell and Katie worked side by side from dawn until dusk, tending the cattle, repairing fences, and trying to keep the struggling ranch afloat. Katie proved to be as capable as she had claimed, and Russell found himself relying on her more and more. She had good instincts and was not afraid to voice her opinions, even when they disagreed with his. They also began to talk more during the long work days. Katie slowly revealed more about her life before Simmons, and Russell found himself sharing stories about his family and the ranch's better days. It was the most Russell had talked to anyone in years, and he was surprised by how much he enjoyed it. Katie had a sharp wit and a dry sense of humor that emerged when she felt safe enough to let her guard down. But Russell also saw the shadows that still haunted her. Katie had nightmares most nights. He could hear her crying out from the house when he slept in the barn. Some mornings, she had fresh bruises on her arms from where she had hurt herself thrashing in her sleep. She never mentioned it, and Russell did not pry, but it worried him. One evening in late July, Russell was working on repairing a bridle in the barn when Katie appeared in the doorway. She had been unusually quiet all day, and there was something nervous in her manner now. "Russell, can I ask you something?" "Of course." Katie twisted her hands together. "Why did you really buy me that day? You said you were not sure, but there must have been a reason." Men do not just throw away money on impulse. Russell set down the bridle and thought about his answer carefully. "I suppose I saw myself in you in a way. After my family died, I felt like everyone was just waiting for me to fail, waiting to divvy up the ranch once I went under. I felt helpless and angry and alone. When I saw you standing there in that line, looking terrified but refusing to break, something in me responded to that. I wanted to give you a chance. The kind of chance I wished someone had given me." Katie was quiet for a long moment. "I've been so angry at you," she finally said. "Even though you have been nothing but kind. I have been angry because I hate that you had to buy me like property. I hate that I owe you anything. I hate feeling weak and dependent." "You do not owe me anything, Katie, and you are not weak. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met." Katie laughed bitterly. "I do not feel strong. I feel broken. Those men, Simmons and his associates, they did things. They said things. And even though I am free now, I still hear their voices in my head. I still feel their hands on me. How is that strong? Russell stood up and took a step toward her, then stopped when he saw her tense. Strength is not about being unbreakable, Katie. It is about breaking and still finding a way to keep going. You survived something terrible and you are still here fighting. That is strength. Tears were streaming down Katie's face now, and she angrily wiped them away. I am so tired, Russell. I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of being angry. I am tired of feeling like I will never be clean again, no matter how many times I wash. Then let yourself be tired, Russell said gently. Stop trying to prove something every minute of every day. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to heal. Katie shook her head. I do not know how. Russell wanted desperately to comfort her, to pull her into his arms and promise her everything would be all right. But he knew she was not ready for that kind of touch, might never be ready for it. So instead he just said, "Then we will figure it out together. One day at a time." Katie nodded, still crying, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked truly vulnerable. Not weak, Russell thought, but human. Real. And something in his chest tightened with an emotion he was not quite ready to name. As summer turned to fall, the dynamic between Russell and Katie continued to shift. They had become a team, working together with an easy synchronization that surprised them both. The ranch was slowly improving under their combined efforts. The cattle had recovered from the blackleg outbreak, and they had managed to repair most of the critical infrastructure. But more than that, Russell found himself looking forward to each day in a way he had not since before his family died. Katie's presence had brought life back to the empty ranch, and Russell was beginning to realize just how lonely he had been. It was not just the help with the work, though that was valuable. It was the conversations over meals, the sound of her humming while she worked, the way she challenged him when she thought he was being foolish. Katie made him feel alive again, made him want to build something instead of just surviving day to day, and Russell was falling in love with her. He tried to deny it, tried to tell himself it was just gratitude or friendship, but he knew the truth. He loved the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. He loved her fierce independence and the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. He loved her strength and her stubbornness, and the way she refused to let her past define her future. But he said nothing. Katie was still healing, still fighting her own battles. She had made it clear from the beginning that she did not want to be anyone's property, and Russell respected that. He would not burden her with feelings she might not be ready to hear or return. Instead, he showed his care through actions, making sure she ate enough, respecting her boundaries, defending her when people in town gossiped about their living arrangement, because people did gossip. Salida was a small town, and the story of Russell Northwood buying one of Simmons's women had spread quickly. Some people thought it was romantic. Others thought it was scandalous. Most just found it curious, wondering what the reclusive rancher was doing with a young woman living on his property. Russell tried to ignore the talk, but he noticed how it affected Katie. She became tense whenever they went to town for supplies, her shoulders hunching as if expecting attacks from all sides. People stared, and some of the more judgmental women whispered behind their hands. It made Russell angry, but Katie always stopped him from confronting anyone. "It does not matter what they think," she would say. "We know the truth. That is enough." But Russell could tell it did matter to her. Katie had been through enough without being judged by strangers who knew nothing about her situation. He wanted to protect her from their narrow-minded opinions, but he did not know how. In early September, the situation came to a head. Russell and Katie were at the general store, loading supplies into their wagon, when a woman named Mrs. Harriet Sheffield approached them. Mrs. Sheffield was the self-appointed moral guardian of Salida, a pinched-faced woman in her 50s who seemed to take pleasure in judging others. "Mr. Northwood," she said in a voice loud enough to carry across the street, "I feel it is my Christian duty to express concern about the situation you have created. Having an unmarried woman living in your home is improper and sets a bad example for the young people of this town." Russell felt his jaw clench, but before he could respond, Katie stepped forward. "Mrs. Sheffield," Katie said, her voice calm but with an edge of steel, "I appreciate your concern, but it is misplaced. Mr. Northwood has been nothing but respectful. He saved me from a terrible situation and gave me an opportunity to work and rebuild my life. There is nothing improper happening at his ranch." Mrs. Sheffield sniffed. "That may be, but appearances matter, young lady. People will talk." "Let them talk," Katie said firmly. "I would rather be judged for living honestly and working hard than praised for conforming to expectations while being miserable. And frankly, Mrs. Sheffield, your concern would be better directed at men like Simmons who traffic in human beings, rather than at people trying to help the victims of such practices." Several people who had been listening murmured in agreement. Mrs. Sheffield's face turned red, and she huffed away in indignation. Russell stared at Katie in amazement. "That was incredible," he said once they were back in the wagon. Katie was shaking slightly, adrenaline clearly wearing off. "I am so tired of people judging us. We have done nothing wrong." "No, we have not, and you handled that perfectly." Russell hesitated, then added, "Thank you for defending us, for defending me." Katie looked at him, and there was something in her eyes that made Russell's breath catch. "You have been defending me since the day we met. It was past time I returned the favor." They rode back to the ranch in thoughtful silence, and Russell wondered if Katie realized what she had said. Not defending her, but defending us. As if they were a unit, a team, something more than just employer and employee. That night, Russell was awakened by screaming from the house. He bolted from the barn, his heart pounding, and burst through the door to find Katie sitting up in bed, her face pale and her eyes wide with terror. She was gasping for breath, clearly in the grip of a nightmare. "Katie," Russell said gently, stopping in the bedroom doorway, "it is all right. You are safe. You are at the ranch." Katie blinked, slowly coming back to herself. When she saw Russell, tears started streaming down her face. "I am sorry. I did not mean to wake you." "You do not need to apologize. Are you all right?" Katie shook her head. "No, I am not all right. I keep dreaming about them, about Simmons and the cage and the things they did, and I wake up and I am terrified and I hate it. I hate feeling this way." Russell took a careful step into the room. "Can I come closer?" Katie nodded, and Russell sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "What you went through was traumatic, Katie. It is going to take time to heal from that. There is no shame in having nightmares." "But I want to be past it," Katie said desperately. "I want to feel normal again. I want to not flinch every time someone comes up behind me. I want to stop seeing threats in every shadow." "You will get there," Russell said. "But healing is not a straight line. It is messy and complicated, and some days will be harder than others. That is okay." Katie wiped her eyes, looking at him with an expression that was equal parts vulnerable and hopeful. "How did you heal? After your family died?" Russell considered the question. "Honestly, I do not think I did. Not really. I just buried it all and kept working. It was not healthy, and I do not recommend it. But maybe we can do better. Maybe we can figure out how to heal together." "Together," Katie repeated softly. Then, so quietly Russell almost missed it, she added, "I would like that." Something shifted between them in that moment, an understanding that went beyond words. Russell reached out slowly, giving Katie plenty of time to pull away, and gently took her hand. She squeezed back, her fingers trembling but holding tight. "You are not alone anymore, Katie. Neither of us is. We have each other." "I am starting to care about you," Katie whispered, "and that terrifies me. Everyone I have ever cared about has either died or betrayed me. I do not know if I can survive that happening again." Russell felt his heart clench at the raw honesty in her words. "I cannot promise I will never die, Katie. None of us know what the future holds. But I can promise I will never betray you. I can promise I will be here for you for as long as you want me to be." Katie looked up at him, searching his face. "What if I want that to be forever?" Russell's breath caught. "Then I would be the luckiest man alive. Katie, I do not want to pressure you or make you feel obligated, but if you are asking whether I have feelings for you, the answer is yes. I have been falling in love with you since the day I watched you face down that crowd with your head held high. You are brave and strong and brilliant, and being around you makes me want to be a better man." Tears were streaming down Katie's face again, but she was smiling now. "I think I am falling in love with you too. I have been fighting it because I am scared, but I cannot fight it anymore. You make me feel safe, Russell. You make me feel like maybe I could be whole again." Russell reached up slowly and cupped her face with his hand, wiping away tears with his thumb. "You are already whole, Katie. You have always been whole. The people who hurt you, they tried to break you, but they failed. You are still here. You are still fighting. You are still you." Katie leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. "Kiss me," she whispered. "Please. I need to know what it feels like when it is my choice, when it is with someone I care about." Russell leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When their lips met, it was gentle and tender, a promise rather than a demand. Katie made a small sound and kissed him back, her hands coming up to grip his shirt. It was sweet and hesitant and perfect, and when they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was my first real kiss," Katie said, sounding amazed. "Everything before was forced or stolen. But that was mine, ours. The first of many, if you will let me," Russell said. Katie smiled, really smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I would like that very much." They talked for hours that night, sitting together on the bed and sharing their hopes and fears for the future. Russell told Katie about his dreams of rebuilding the ranch into something his parents would have been proud of. Katie talked about wanting to feel safe again, about wanting to create a life that was truly her own. And they both acknowledged the feelings that had been growing between them, feelings that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. As dawn broke, Russell reluctantly stood to go start the day's chores, but Katie caught his hand. "Would you stay?" she asked. "Just to sleep, nothing else. I just do not want to be alone right now." Russell settled back onto the bed, fully clothed, and Katie curled up against his side with her head on his chest. Within minutes, she was asleep, and for the first time since she had arrived, she did not have nightmares. Russell lay awake, feeling the weight of her trust and the responsibility that came with it, and made a silent promise to himself that he would be worthy of it. The months that followed were a revelation. Russell and Katie's relationship deepened as fall turned to winter. They continued to work the ranch together, but now there was an added dimension to their partnership. They held hands while walking between the barn and house. They stole kisses in the barn. They sat together in the evenings by the fire, Katie reading aloud from books while Russell mended tack or worked on small repairs. Katie was healing, slowly but surely. The nightmares became less frequent. She stopped flinching at sudden movements. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by a growing confidence and peace. Russell watched her transformation with awe, understanding that this was not about him fixing her. Katie was doing the hard work of healing herself. He was just lucky enough to be there to support her through it. But Russell also noticed how people in town were starting to treat Katie differently. The women who had whispered about her began to nod politely when she passed. The men who had leered at her learned to show respect after Russell made it clear that any disrespect toward Katie would be met with consequences. Katie was becoming known not as that woman Northwood bought, but as Katie Garrett, the capable rancher who had turned the Northwood spread around. Because the ranch was thriving now. With Katie's knowledge and their combined hard work, they had increased the herd size and improved the quality of their cattle. They were making money again, enough to not just survive but actually save for the future. Russell had even been able to hire a couple of temporary hands for the most labor-intensive work, though Katie still insisted on doing her share. In December, as the first snow was falling, Russell took Katie on a ride up into the hills overlooking the ranch. They sat on their horses, looking down at the property spread below them, the house with smoke curling from the chimney, the barn and corrals, the cattle grazing peacefully in the winter pasture. "This is all so beautiful," Katie said, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "When I first came here, I was too hurt and angry to see it, but now I understand why you love this place. It is more beautiful with you in it," Russell said. Then he took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "Katie, I have been thinking about something for a while now, and I need to know how you feel about it." Katie turned to look at him, curiosity in her eyes. "What is it?" Russell dismounted and walked over to her horse, reaching up to help her down. Once she was standing in front of him, he took both her hands in his. "We have been through a lot together this year. We have built something good here, not just with the ranch but between us. You are my best friend and my partner, and I cannot imagine my life without you in it. Katie Garrett, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Katie's eyes went wide, and for a moment Russell's heart sank, thinking he had misjudged the situation. But then she was laughing and crying at the same time, nodding vigorously. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course I will marry you, Russell Northwood. I love you so much." Russell pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and it felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were grinning like fools. "I do not have a ring yet," Russell admitted. "I wanted to ask you first, make sure you said yes before I spent the money," Katie laughed. "I do not need a fancy ring, I just need you." "You will have both," Russell promised. "I want to do this right. I want everyone to know that you are my choice, my partner, my equal. Not some woman I bought, but the woman I chose to build a life with." They were married in early January of 1879, in a simple ceremony at the church in Salida. Russell had been worried that people might not come, given the gossip that had swirled around them, but the church was packed. The ranchers Russell occasionally worked with were there, along with many of the townspeople who had watched Katie transform from a frightened victim into a confident, capable woman. Even Mrs. Sheffield attended, though she sniffed disapprovingly throughout the ceremony. Katie wore a simple blue dress that Russell had bought for her, and she had never looked more beautiful. When they exchanged vows, her voice was strong and clear, without a trace of the fear that had defined her when they first met. Russell's voice shook slightly with emotion as he promised to love and cherish her for the rest of their lives. After the ceremony, there was a reception at the local hotel, funded by Russell's now healthy bank account. People congratulated them and wished them well, and Russell noticed how many of them spoke directly to Katie, treating her as a person of substance and importance. She had earned their respect through her actions, and Russell could not have been prouder. That night, as they returned to the ranch as husband and wife, Katie was quieter than Russell had expected. "What are you thinking about?" he asked as they stood together on the porch, looking out at the moonlit landscape. "I am thinking about how different my life is now compared to a year ago," Katie said. "If someone had told me then that I would end up here, married to a good man and running a successful ranch, I would have thought they were crazy. I was so broken, Russell. I did not think I could ever be whole again. Russell pulled her close. You were never broken, Katie. Damaged, maybe. Hurt, but never broken. And you did not become whole because of me. You became whole because you refused to give up. You fought your way back, inch by inch, day by day. I was just lucky enough to witness it. Katie turned in his arms to face him. You did more than witness it. You made it possible. You gave me a safe place to heal. You respected me when no one else would. You saw me as a person, not as property or a victim. That mattered more than you can know. You saved me too, you know, Russell said. I was just existing before you came, going through the motions, waiting to fail. You gave me a reason to try again. You made me want to build something, not just for myself, but for us. They kissed under the stars, and then Russell swept Katie up in his arms and carried her over the threshold, making her laugh. That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and passion, and Katie cried afterward, but this time from joy rather than pain. Thank you, she whispered against Russell's chest. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for letting me heal at my own pace. Thank you for trusting me, Russell replied. Thank you for choosing me. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch continued to thrive under their joint stewardship, becoming known throughout the region for quality cattle and fair dealing. Russell and Katie became pillars of the community, respected for their hard work and integrity. Katie, in particular, became known for her generosity, quietly helping other women who found themselves in difficult situations. She never forgot where she came from, and she made it her mission to ensure that other women had better options than she had been given. In the fall of 1879, Katie discovered she was pregnant. She was terrified at first, afraid that becoming a mother would overwhelm her still healing psyche. But Russell was there to support her through every moment of fear and doubt. When their son was born in May of 1880, a healthy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, Katie held him and cried with overwhelming love. They named him Thomas, after Russell's father. He was a happy baby, and Russell and Katie devoted themselves to giving him a childhood full of love and security, everything they had both lost at different points in their lives. Katie proved to be a fierce and devoted mother, though she insisted on continuing to work on the ranch. She would strap Thomas to her back while she did chores, singing to him as she worked. Russell would come in from the fields to find them napping together in a patch of sunlight, and his heart would swell with love for his little family. In 1882, they had a daughter, whom they named Mary after Russell's mother. She was a spitfire from the beginning, loud and demanding and full of personality. Katie would laugh and say that Mary was payback for all the trouble she had caused as a young woman. Russell just adored both his children, marveling that his life could become so full after being so empty for so long. As the children grew, Russell and Katie made sure to teach them values of respect, hard work, and compassion. They told Thomas and Mary age-appropriate versions of how they had met, emphasizing that it was important to stand up for people who could not stand up for themselves. The children grew up knowing that their mother was the strongest person on the ranch, even stronger than their father, and they respected her accordingly. Katie's transformation was complete by then. The frightened, angry woman Russell had bought from Simmons was gone, replaced by a confident rancher, devoted mother, and beloved wife. But she never forgot her past. Every year on the anniversary of the day Russell had bought her freedom, they would ride up to the hills overlooking the ranch and reflect on how far they had come. It was their private tradition, a way of honoring the journey they had taken together. In the summer of 1885, news reached them that Simmons had been arrested in Denver for human trafficking. Multiple women had come forward to testify against him, and he was facing serious prison time. Russell expected Katie to be triumphant when she heard the news, but instead, she was thoughtful. "I am glad he will be punished," she said, "but I find I do not hate him anymore. I pity him. What a small, sad life he must have led to treat people the way he did." Russell pulled her close. "You are a better person than I am. I still want to punch him in the face." Katie laughed. "I did not say I would not enjoy watching that happen. I just said I do not hate him. There is a difference." They stood together on their porch, watching Thomas chase Mary around the yard while she shrieked with laughter. Their ranch was prosperous. Their family was healthy and happy. They had built a life together that neither of them had dared to hope for in those early, difficult days. "You ever regret it?" Russell asked suddenly. "Staying here with me instead of trying to start fresh somewhere else where no one knew your past?" Katie looked at him like he had grown a second head. "Regret this? Regret you? Never. This is my home, Russell. You and the children are my family. My past shaped me, but it does not define me anymore. I am Katie Northwood, rancher and mother and wife. I am exactly who I want to be." Russell kissed her temple. "You are the strongest person I have ever known, Katie Northwood. And you are the best man I have ever known, Russell Northwood. We are a good team." "The best team," Russell agreed. As the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Russell and Katie stood together on the porch of their ranch house, watching their children play. It had been 7 years since that terrible day in the town square when their lives had collided. 7 years of hard work, healing, and building something beautiful from the ashes of their respective tragedies. Katie leaned her head on Russell's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. This was everything he had never known. He wanted the noise and chaos of family, the satisfaction of a thriving ranch, the love of a woman who challenged and inspired him daily. "Tell me what you are thinking," Katie said softly. Russell considered the question. "I am thinking about the day I first saw you, how you looked so small and scared but refused to break. I am thinking about how lucky I am that I stopped that day, that I listened to my instincts instead of walking away. I am thinking about how my life would be empty and meaningless without you in it." Katie tilted her face up to look at him. "I am thinking similar things, about how you were the first person in months to look at me and see a human being instead of property, about how you kept your word when you could have done anything you wanted, about how you gave me space to heal and time to learn to trust again." "We saved each other," Russell said. "We did," Katie agreed. "And we built this life together, brick by brick, day by day. I love you, Russell Northwood. I love you for your kindness and your strength and your unwavering integrity. I love you too, Katie. I love you for your courage and your resilience and your fierce heart. You are my partner in every sense of the word." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, and then Katie called the children in for dinner. The family gathered around the table that Russell's father had built decades ago, now surrounded by the next generation of Northwoods. Thomas told stories about the foal that had been born that morning, his eyes bright with excitement. Mary demanded to know when she could start learning to rope cattle like her mother. Russell and Katie exchanged amused glances over their children's heads, silently communicating in the way that long married couples do. After dinner, after the children were bathed and tucked into bed, Russell and Katie sat together by the fire. Katie was mending one of Thomas's shirts while Russell worked on his ledgers, updating the ranch's financial records. It was a comfortable domesticity that Russell treasured, these quiet evening hours when they could simply exist together. "We should expand the herd next spring," Katie said, not looking up from her sewing. "Prices are good right now and we have the grazing land for it." "I was thinking the same thing," Russell replied. "Maybe hire another full-time hand too." We are getting too much work for just the two of us, especially with the children needing attention. Katie nodded. That makes sense. Oh, and Mrs. Anderson approached me in town yesterday. Her daughter is in a bad situation with her husband. I told her she could come stay in the barn loft for a while if she needs a safe place. Russell looked up from his ledgers. Of course, whatever she needs. This was another thing Russell loved about Katie, her willingness to help others who found themselves in difficult situations. Over the years, they had quietly assisted several women in leaving abusive relationships or escaping desperate circumstances. Katie never forgot where she had come from, and she was determined to be for others what Russell had been for her. "You are a good woman, Katie Northwood," Russell said. Katie smiled at him. "I learned from the best." As the fire burned low and the night grew late, they made their way to bed, where they made love with the easy passion of long familiarity. Afterward, lying in each other's arms, Katie said something that had been on her mind. "Do you know what tomorrow is?" Russell thought about it. "The 15th of June. Why? It is 7 years to the day since you bought my freedom, 7 years since my life changed forever." Russell tightened his arms around her. "Hard to believe it has been that long. Feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "I want to do something to mark the occasion," Katie said. "Something meaningful. I was thinking we could donate money to the orphanage in Denver, make sure children who lose their families have better support than my brother gave me." "That is a perfect idea," Russell said. "Let us do it in the name of hope and second chances." Katie was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you know what the best part of these 7 years has been?" "What?" "Learning that I am stronger than I thought I was. When Simmons had me in that cage, I thought I was broken beyond repair. I thought my life was over. But instead, it was just beginning. I learned that strength is not about never being hurt or scared. It is about being hurt and scared and choosing to keep going anyway." "You helped me learn that, Russell." "You taught me the same lesson," Russell said. "After my family died, I gave up on everything except bare survival. You reminded me that life could be good again, that it was worth trying, worth risking pain for the possibility of joy." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious, a love built on respect, trust, and genuine partnership. The next morning, Russell woke to find Katie already up and standing at the window, looking out at the ranch. He climbed out of bed and went to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," Katie said. "The past, the present, the future. How lucky we are, how hard we have worked to get here. How much I love this life we have built. Any regrets? Not a single one." Katie turned in his arms to face him. "I have everything I ever wanted, Russell. A home where I feel safe. Work that I find meaningful. Children who are growing up strong and kind. And a husband who loves me as an equal, not as property or a possession." "You are my equal in every way," Russell said firmly. "You always have been, from the moment I first saw you. You were never less than me, even when circumstances tried to make you so." Katie kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, "Thank you for seeing me, for really seeing me. That was the greatest gift you ever gave me." They spent that anniversary day working together on the ranch, as they did most days. But there was an extra awareness between them, a recognition of how far they had come and how much they had overcome. That evening, after the children were in bed, they rode up to their spot in the hills and watched the sun set over their land. "I want to grow old with you," Katie said suddenly. "I want to watch our children grow up and have children of their own. I want to work this ranch until we are too old and tired to continue, and then I want to sit on that porch and watch the next generation take over. I want a lifetime with you, Russell Northwood." "You have it," Russell promised. "Every day for the rest of my life I am yours. We are going to build an empire together, Katie. Not just a successful ranch, but a legacy of kindness and strength and love. Future Northwoods will tell stories about us, about the woman who was strong enough to survive hell and come out stronger, and the man who was smart enough to recognize her worth." Katie laughed through tears. "That is a lot of pressure. You have already done the hard part. Everything else is just details." As darkness fell and the stars came out, they made their way back down to the ranch house, to their children and their home and their future. The path had been difficult, marked by pain and struggle and hard-won victories. But they had walked it together, and that had made all the difference. Years continued to pass, each one adding new layers to their story. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. Mary became a skilled horsewoman and a fierce advocate for justice, clearly taking after her mother. In 1890, Katie gave birth to another son whom they named Samuel. He was a surprise, coming 10 years after Mary, but a welcome one. His arrival brought new energy to the household and reminded Russell and Katie that their love story was still being written. The ranch continued to prosper. By the early 1890s, it was one of the most successful operations in the region. Russell and Katie had expanded far beyond those early struggling days, now running hundreds of head of cattle and employing several full-time hands. They treated their workers fairly and paid them well, earning a reputation as good people to work for. Several of their hands had been with them for years, becoming almost like extended family. But success never changed the fundamental dynamic between Russell and Katie. They remained partners in every sense, making decisions together and valuing each other's input equally. Katie never lost her love of hard work, often found in the barn before dawn or out riding the range to check on cattle. Russell never lost his respect for his wife's strength and capability. They grew older together, laugh lines appearing around their eyes and gray threading through their hair, but the love between them only deepened. In 1895, as they approached their 16th anniversary, Russell came down with a serious illness. It was pneumonia, and for a terrifying week, Katie thought she might lose him. She sat by his bedside day and night, bathing his fevered skin and forcing liquids down his throat. The children were scared, and Katie had to be strong for them while hiding her own terror. "You do not get to leave me, Russell Northwood," she whispered to him one night when his fever was at its highest. "We have a deal, a lifetime together. You promised me, and you always keep your promises." Russell pulled through, though it took weeks for him to fully recover. During his convalescence, Katie took over running the entire ranch without missing a beat, proving once again that she was every bit as capable as any man. When Russell was finally strong enough to sit on the porch and watch her work, he was struck again by how lucky he was. "You are incredible," he told her one evening when she came in exhausted from a long day of work. "I do not know how you did all that." Katie collapsed into the chair next to him. "I did it because it needed to be done, and because I will not let this ranch fail. We built this together, Russell. I am not going to let it fall apart just because you caught a cough." Russell laughed, which turned into a cough of his own. "It was more than a cough, and you know it." "Fine, it was pneumonia. My point stands." Katie reached over and took his hand. "You scared me, Russell. I know we cannot live forever, but I am not ready to lose you yet. We have too much left to do." "I am not going anywhere," Russell promised. "I still have to see Thomas take over the ranch and watch Mary scandalize the town by becoming the first female sheriff. And make sure Samuel does not burn down the barn in one of his experiments." Katie laughed. "All noble goals, so you better keep that promise and stick around." He did. Russell recovered fully, and life returned to normal. But the illness had reminded both of them that their time together was finite and precious. They made an effort to appreciate the small moments: morning coffee on the porch, evening rides together, quiet conversations by the fire. They had built something beautiful, and they were determined to enjoy every moment of it. As the century turned and they entered the 1900s, Russell and Katie watched their children begin to build lives of their own. Thomas, now 20 years old, was taking on more responsibility at the ranch and courting a nice young woman from town. Mary, 18 and fierce, had indeed shocked everyone by declaring her intention to study law. Samuel, at 10, was showing signs of his mother's intelligence and his father's steady temperament. On a warm summer evening in June of 1900, Russell and Katie took one of their traditional rides up to the hills overlooking the ranch. It had been 22 years since that fateful day in Salida when their lives had collided, and they made this pilgrimage every year to reflect on their journey. 22 years, Katie marveled, looking down at the sprawling ranch below them. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like no time at all. "The best 22 years of my life," Russell said. "Every single one of them." Katie leaned against him, and they stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Finally, Katie said, "Do you remember what you said to me that first night, when I had the nightmare?" "I said a lot of things that night." "You said I was strong. That strength was not about being unbreakable, but about breaking and still finding a way to keep going. Do you remember?" "I remember," Russell confirmed. "You were right. I did not believe you at the time, but you were right. I was broken, Russell, shattered into 1,000 pieces, but I put myself back together piece by piece. And you know what I discovered?" "What?" "That I was stronger in the broken places. All the cracks and scars, they made me who I am. They made me capable of building this life, of being a mother, of running this ranch, of loving you with everything I have. I would not be the person I am today if I had not gone through what I went through." Russell turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Katie Northwood, you are the strongest person I have ever known, not despite what you survived, but because of how you chose to respond to it. You could have let it destroy you. Instead, you let it forge you into something remarkable." "We did it together," Katie said. "I could not have done any of this without you. You gave me the safety and space to heal. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You loved me when I felt unlovable. That mattered more than you will ever know." "You did the same for me," Russell said. "I was dead inside when we met, just going through the motions. You brought me back to life, Katie. You gave me a reason to try again, to hope again, to love again. We saved each other." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life that exceeded either of their wildest dreams. The journey had been hard, marked by pain and struggle and moments of despair. But they had walked it together hand in hand, and that had made all the difference. As they rode back down to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Katie said, "You know what I want to do next?" "What is that?" "I want to write it all down, our story. Not for publication or anything like that, but for our children and grandchildren. So they know where they came from. So they understand that strength and love can triumph over even the darkest circumstances." "That is a wonderful idea," Russell agreed. "Though I think you should be the one to write it. You are better with words than I am." Katie smiled. "We will write it together, like we do everything else," and they did. Over the following months, Russell and Katie spent their evenings writing down their story, from that terrible day in the town square to the life they had built together. It was painful at times. remembering the darkness of those early days. But it was also cathartic, a way of honoring their journey and acknowledging how far they had come. When they finished, they put the manuscript in a safe place, a gift for future generations of Northwoods. It was their legacy, proof that love and strength could overcome even the worst circumstances life could throw at you. More years passed, each one adding new chapters to their ongoing story. Thomas married his sweetheart and gave them 2 grandchildren. Mary did indeed become a lawyer, one of the first women in Colorado to do so, and she used her position to advocate for women's rights and workers' protections. Samuel grew into a fine young man with a gift for animal husbandry, introducing new breeding practices that improved the quality of their cattle even further. Russell and Katie grew older together, their hair turning white and their movements slowing, but the love between them never diminished. They handed over day-to-day ranch operations to Thomas and his growing family, but they remained involved, offering advice and wisdom earned through decades of experience. On a spring morning in 1920, 42 years after their first meeting, Katie woke to find Russell lying very still beside her. For a moment, panic seized her, but then she saw the gentle rise and fall of his chest and relaxed. He was just sleeping deeply, his face peaceful in the morning light. Katie lay there watching him, this man who had changed her life in every possible way. They had been married for 41 years, together for 42. They had built a successful ranch, raised 3 wonderful children, and touched countless lives through their kindness and generosity. It had been a good life, a full life, everything Katie had never dared to hope for in those dark days before Russell. Russell's eyes opened, and he smiled when he saw her watching him. "Good morning, beautiful," Katie laughed. "I am 70 years old, Russell. I have not been beautiful in decades." "You have been beautiful every single day since I met you," Russell said firmly. "Age has nothing to do with it. You are beautiful because of who you are, not what you look like." Katie leaned over and kissed him gently. "I love you, Russell Northwood. I have loved you for 42 years, and I will love you for however many more we have." "I love you too, Katie. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." They got up slowly, joints protesting the movement, and made their way to the kitchen. The main house was quiet. Thomas and his family had built their own home on the property, giving Russell and Katie privacy in their later years. They made coffee and breakfast together, a routine they had followed for decades, moving around each other with the easy synchronization of long practice. After breakfast, they walked out to the porch and sat in their rocking chairs, looking out at the ranch that had been their life's work. Grandchildren ran around the yard, their laughter carrying on the morning air. The ranch was thriving under Thomas's management, ensuring that the Northwood legacy would continue for generations to come. "We did well," Katie said softly. "We built something good here, Russell." "We did," Russell agreed, reaching over to take her hand. "And it all started with you having the courage to keep fighting, even when everything seemed hopeless. It started with you having the compassion to help a stranger when you did not have to," Katie corrected. "We both played our parts." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching their legacy unfold before them. The future was secure. Their children were happy and successful. Their grandchildren were growing up with love and opportunities. Everything they had worked for, everything they had built together was flourishing. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting golden light over everything, Katie squeezed Russell's hand. "No regrets," she said. "Not a single one." "Not a single one," Russell echoed. "It has been a perfect life, Katie. Thank you for sharing it with me." They rocked slowly in their chairs, 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a love story for the ages. the lonely cowboy who had taken a chance on compassion, and the broken woman who had refused to stay broken, had created something beautiful together: a family, a legacy, and a love that would endure long after they were gone. Their story would be passed down through generations of Northwoods, a reminder that strength comes in many forms, that love can heal even the deepest wounds, and that sometimes the greatest acts of courage are choosing to hope when hope seems impossible. Russell and Katie had proven that a person's worth is not determined by their circumstances, but by the choices they make in response to those circumstances. The woman everyone had pitied had indeed become the strongest person Russell ever knew. And together, they had built a life that neither of them could have imagined in those early, difficult days. It was a testament to resilience, to partnership, and to the transformative power of love freely given and gratefully received. As they sat together on their porch, surrounded by the fruits of their labor and the love of their family, Russell and Katie Northwood knew that their story had been one worth living, and that was the greatest achievement of all.